Welcome to 64K. Hosted by BastichB.
Hi, I'm BastichB and welcome to 64K. This is episode 2 of Car, Coffee and 3 Reviews. So the first game for review today is Impossible Mission on the Commodore 64. This game was released by Epix in 1984. So before we get started with the review, I just want to talk a little bit about Epix, the company that made the game. So if you grew up playing games in the 1980s, then Epix is a name you'd immediately recognize. They were basically the rock stars of 1980s. They released countless games that were just freaking awesome. Some of my favorites were Summer Games 2, Winter Games, World Games, Pit Stop. It's endless. And I know I've just rattled off a whole bunch of sports games, and I actually don't even like sports games, and their sports games are freaking great. So if they made me like sports games, then you know they're doing something right. So Impossible Mission was a game that came out around the time before I would say Epix's second wave started. It's when their games improved drastically. Their first slew of games in like 1982, 1983, they were using very basic graphics, very basic sound. The games were pretty cool, things like Rogue and Crush, Crumble and Chomp, stuff like that. But once Impossible Mission came out, their whole quality had just jumped like tenfold. Yeah, so the Commodore 64 version of this is the original version. If you're ever going to play this game, I would highly recommend playing this one and not any others. There are a lot of fairly decent ports, the Master System and stuff like that, but none of them match up. You really need to play the original. Now the premise of the game is pretty basic. You're a secret agent and you're infiltrating this crazy mad scientist's lair. His name is Alvin Atombender. Yeah, that's his real name. Check the instructions. So he's managed to Shanghai a whole lot of nuclear weapons, and he's got the codes to launch them, and he's threatening the world with nuclear annihilation for whatever mad scientisty reason. So the game's like a side-scrolling action-adventure game. You're going along, looking through Alvin's lair, looking through everything he has, like his computers, his desks, everything. He's hidden his codes all over the place. You have to assemble a whole bunch of these codes, and then eventually you can gain access to his lair and take him down. Now that sounds pretty easy, but it's way harder than it seems. Something I should mention is that the game randomizes itself. So every time you go into his lair, the rooms and everything are set out in a different order. So, and even the puzzle pieces are in completely different places. So it adds a whole lot of, the game feels very fresh every time you play it, even though you know they've just randomized the rooms. It just feels like you're playing a new game each time, which I thought was like a pretty cool touch. Yeah, so searching this place wouldn't be all that bad, but Alvin has set up all his pesky split personality robots all over this place, and they are a real pain. So each one of these little Dalek mofos has got their own bizarre personalities. Basically they all want to kill you in every way possible. You got the shocky guy, you got the dude that just heat seeks onto you and just rams you and shocks you to death. You got other ones that have different weird patterns. As long as you just keep watching them, you can figure them out. You can somersault over them and collect the puzzle pieces. You've also got this weird dude. He's like a big ball that just hovers around and just latches onto you and shocks you to death. Also, the big orby of death things, like the you know, the head from Zardos. Yeah, each one of these robots has like their own personality. There's a lot of variance on it, so you really have to pay attention. I really like the fact that they're not all just one-toned stupid robots that have like one pattern and that's it. You would expect that from a game made at this time, but they really are like unique. Every one of them is unique. I really love that. I really love the effort they put into that. Another thing that probably made this game harder than it was for me back in the day was that I had a bootleg version of it, because that is the joys of playing video games on computers in the 1980s. Almost all your games are bootlegs. It's just the nature of the beast. Most games you couldn't get hold of, and you know, they were expensive, so people just used to swap games and copy them for each other and stuff like that. I had a pretty big library of original games, but I also had a massive library of bootlegs, and Impossible Mission was one of them. So I never had the instructions. So a few years later I actually did end up getting the game, the original version, and it came with the instructions, and it explained a whole lot of nuances of the game which I really did not realize was going on. One really great aspect about this game is the sound. It is really good. Talking about the digitized speech that it has all over the place. Alvin pops in and he taunts you all the time, like with some little line of dialogue.
Destroy him, my robot.
It's actually extremely impressive. Like right from the moment the game starts and he gives you his beginning taunt.
Another visitor. Stay a while. Stay forever.
Yeah. That is like a classic opening for a game. And you can go into random rooms here and there and you'll hear him say something, taunting you, like, you know, it really gave you the sense that he was like there and just watching you on his little cameras with his beady little eyes. Like up until this point, you know, especially PC games had abysmal sound. That was just terrible. And most games had pretty terrible sound. The Commodore 64 was way ahead in terms of music and sound effects, so their games weren't that bad. But this game is just, wow, it's impressive. Even today, it's impressive. Just bear in mind, like, nothing had voices until like the CD-ROM era in the 90s. So I mean, we're talking way ahead, yeah. Yeah, and that 8-bit death scream as you fall to your death, it still gives me chills even today. And for some bizarre reason, I swear that that voice is the same dude that falls off the dock in Beachhead 2. It does sound the same, right? Okay, I'm just gonna make a quick pit stop here. I need a bit of coffee so I can continue this review because it's super early and I'm super tired. Something I haven't mentioned so far is the graphics. They're extremely good for the time. The animation of the main dude is extremely cool. He's so realistic, the way he runs and does somersaults. Just bear in mind, the most realistic dude I'd seen in a video game up until that point was Pitfall Harry. You know, that was considered extremely cool animation. So this was actually quite amazing. It was so amazing, the fact that Epix actually used the Impossible Mission dude in one of the other games, like summer games. They used him to do the intro when he runs up and lights the Olympic torch, and he was also in the pole vault part. Obviously he didn't do a somersault, but they used him again. Another unique factor about this game is the fact that it doesn't use the traditional 3 lives method, which pretty much every single video game up to that point used. It used time. So you got 6 hours to infiltrate Elvin's base and take him down. That's 6 hours real time. You can't save the game or anything like that, so you have to play it all through in like one go. So how that works is, every time you die, you get shocked or fall to your death or whatever it is, you lose 10 minutes on the clock. So that starts adding up real quickly. And another thing I forgot to mention is that when you get your puzzle pieces, you have to put them together. Now, you have like a 1980s kind of spa PDA piece of garbage. Anyway, this thing, you can get the puzzle pieces and you can manipulate them. This is it. That's what it looks like. You see it at the bottom of the screen when you are outside a room, when you're in the elevator shaft, where you like can access different areas of the base. So with that thing, you can take puzzle pieces, flip them, invert them, colorize them. They all have to be a specific color to fit, you know, whatever piece you're trying to put together. And also, you got a opportunity to call your base and ask them whether you've got the right amount of pieces to complete this puzzle, because some of them are like really difficult, and every time you call your base you also lose 2 minutes off the clock. So you want to keep that down to the minimum, especially when you're getting like fried all the time by Elvin's Dalek looking little mofo robots. I actually even remember the time I actually beat this game. It was late 80s, Saturday, lunchtime, started playing it. For whatever reason, I was just on a roll. I just couldn't be touched. I was collecting puzzle pieces, everything was working out. I had a few deaths, nothing too drastic. The pieces of the puzzles were coming together, I had passwords going, everything was just perfect. I'd been playing the game for at least 2, maybe 3.5 hours at that point. Then my dad busts into the room and says, "Do I want to go hit some golf balls with him at the driving range?" And I was like, "Not really." And then he's like, "I'll buy you ice cream afterwards though." I was like, "Hells yes, let's go." So, paused the game, told everybody in my family that if you touch the computer, I will murder you when I get home, and went off and did my best impression of the dude from Leaderboard. Got back, got a few more puzzles done, died a whole bunch more times. I was starting to stress like big time at that point. Down to about 40 minutes left, got the final puzzle pieces, put them together, managed to complete the game with 10 minutes on the clock. You couldn't have possibly have planned it better than that. The game even has a cool ending, which is actually pretty unique to say, especially for an 80s game. You got to bear in mind that most games then, if you got a flashing font that said congratulations at the end of your game, you were pretty happy. So this one actually has a special speech sample and some cool graphics, so it was awesome. Fantastic time. So overall, I think Impossible Mission is a pure classic game in every sense of the word. It's well produced, graphics are great, sound is excellent. It's done by a famous company of the time that did excellent work. Epix is classic, all their games are just fantastic. I really think you should check this game out. Please play the Commodore 64 version. It's by far the best. You'll get the best experience out of this game. So pick it up and enjoy. So the next game we have for review today is called The Heart of China. It was made by Dynamics in 1991 for the PC. This was definitely one of those games that eluded me for quite a while. Just couldn't find it anywhere for whatever reason. I eventually found it in a thrift store. I got it for $2. Fantastic deal. Like a moron, I didn't look inside. I felt the box, it felt really heavy, so I was like convinced that the game was complete. Got home, opened it up, there were no discs inside, so I was like super disappointed. The box and everything, manuals all there, so it was still kind of cool, it was still a good deal I think, but I was like crushed. The weird thing is, that literally probably about 2-3 weeks later, I went to the same thrift store and I found the same game. It's like just strange. Felt the box was heavy. This time I opened it up and I looked inside and it was fully complete. Got it for $2. So I got 2 copies for $4 with only 1 game. Now the company that made this, Dynamics, is an excellent software company. They're responsible for fantastic games like Mech Warrior, Red Baron, Aces Over Europe, Project Firestart. So many great games. Just, the list is endless. I could just carry on prattling on here for about 700 hours. Yeah, so the plot is pretty simple, but it leads to tons of high adventure. You get hired by a dude called Lomax. You're this kind of pilot that's based out of Hong Kong in the 1930s. Anyway, this guy Lomax, he's a rich dude. He hires you to find his daughter, Kate, who's doing like missionary work in China. She gets captured by this mental Chinese warlord, and he wants you to go find her. If you've ever seen the movie High Road to China with Tom Selleck, then you'll know exactly the feel and look of this game. And if you've never seen that movie, check it out. Like, seriously, it's pretty damn good.
Tom Selleck and Bess Armstrong are taking the high road to China.
Let me get this straight. There are people trying to kill us?
I really love the graphics and look of this game. It's got this really unique digitized photos of the actors. And then it's got these cool, like, kind of painted backgrounds. They work so well. It gives you that, like, 1930s feel. It's also the 256 colors and the awesome VGA resolution. I mean, it still actually looks pretty good even to this day. So besides being a point-and-click adventure game, the other major gameplay element, there are some action sequences also. The other major gameplay mechanic is time. Time is your enemy, big time. So what I mean is, the longer you take to complete the game, the less money Lomax is going to pay you out, because it costs money to fly your plane around and do all miscellaneous things. So the money you're going to earn at the end gets less and less and less the longer you take. So you definitely want to try and figure out how to play the game most efficient way you can. I'm just going to pull in over here. Stop for a few minutes. You have branching stories by choices. Whatever choices you make, change things up big time. So you can go in completely different directions. So there's a lot of different ways to complete this game, and there's quite a few endings as well. Okay, I feel good. I'm all fueled up. I'm ready to go. Carry on with this review. So there's one thing you're going to have to get really used to while playing this game, is dying. You die a lot in this game. Like, almost everything you do has potential for death. So there is a bit of trial and error involved in this game. It's slightly annoying, but as long as you save all the time, you're okay. You can die at the drop of a hat. So just be aware of that. If something seems like a little bit dodgy, then it probably is, and you are about to die, so get used to it. The game also uses an enhanced engine that Dynamics made for a game called Rise of the Dragon. This is an excellent game that I eventually ended up playing on my Sega CD when they re-released it. The CD-ROM version, it had all voices and all extra stuff. So anyway, that's the way I played that game. That was like a same type of game. It's like a point-and-click adventure from your character's point of view, set in a cyberpunk universe, like a detective kind of thing. Time also played a major element in that game. So if you like Heart of China, you should definitely check out Rise of the Dragon as well. I think it's a pretty damn good game. So the puzzles in this game are very logical. That's what I like about it. You know, with kind of point-and-click adventure games, sometimes the developers go a bit mental. And they screw up their own games by having really stupid or illogical puzzles. There's countless games you can start with having those problems. Anyway, for the Heart of China, I honestly didn't feel like this game had that issue. There's a few tricky ones here and there, but overall, if you think of the solution, and that is probably the solution. You just got to figure out how to do it without dying. That's your real problem. So the game isn't only restricted to the Hong Kong area. You also get to travel to other places like Paris and Istanbul. And various other places. You get to go on trains and airplanes, and it gives you that whole like 1930s adventure feel, like you discovering the world for the first time. So it works quite well. You also get to switch characters at certain points in the game. What I mean is you become other members of your party. Like you could take on Kate's role at some point, and at another point you become your ninja sidekick friend. So it's pretty cool. It changes a little bit. It changes the gameplay up a little bit just to, you know, it adds a bit of variety. So overall, I think Heart of China is a really cool game. Whether you play it on PC or the Amiga version, it's all gold. I think it's pretty underrated. If you really like this game and the way it plays, you should also check out Rise of the Dragon. I would consider it almost like those two are like a pair. Yeah, so check it out. You won't be disappointed. Okay, for our third and final review today, I always like to take a kind of an action-y console title to finish it off, and nothing screams action more than this title. Streets of Rage 2 for the Sega Megadrive, released by Sega in 1992. This, in my opinion, is the best scrolling beat-em-up of all time. I know, it's a pretty bold statement to make, especially if you consider the retro competition for this style of game. But I'll attempt to tell you why. So I got my Sega Megadrive in 1992, so I missed that first wave of Sega Megadrive games that came out, and in that first wave was Streets of Rage, the original. So I always used to read about it in the Sega Mean Machines magazine I used to buy, which was a UK-based magazine, which is pretty cool. And they always used to spout on how this game was like so freaking awesome. So I ended up playing Streets of Rage 2 before the original. Then I went back and played the original. The original is a pretty good game, no doubt about it. But Streets of Rage 2 just improves on everything about it. So the plot for this game, if you can call it a plot, is basically Mr. X, the bad guy from Streets of Rage 1. He comes back in typical 80s cop movie style for revenge. He wants to take over the city again with his thugs and whatevers. So Axel and the posse have to get back together and start cracking some scum skulls. It's pretty much Death Wish 1, 2, and 3 mashed together without guns. Like for reals.
Yeah, so this time around you got 4 characters to choose from instead of 3 from the original game.
So you got Blaze and Axel, who come back from the original game. They are pretty well-rounded characters in terms of strength and speed.
Then the two new characters are Skate, this little dude on rollerblades.
Now, whenever I see a dude on rollerblades, I can't help but think about that sketchy 1990s rollerblade exploitation movie that came out starring Corey Haim.
What day of the rope? Sterilizing everybody? It's brilliant.
Hurry up and give him what he wants.
Or what do you want? Give us the drugs, dum-dum.
No, like, it's a real thing. They actually made a rollerblade exploitation movie. I swear it was called A Prayer for the Rollerblades or some nonsense like that. Anyway, he's a pretty fast character. He's pretty good. He's got a nice little moveset. Final character is called Max. He's your typical Final Fight Hagar ripoff. He's big and hulky, he's slow, but he can dish out a heck of a load of damage. Now what's cool about these characters is that they all have the same moveset, which you can pull off exactly the same for each character. So jumping between these characters to mess around with them or play them is very easy. You don't have to learn a whole new moveset. They each have their own, obviously, moves, like style of moves, like distance and stuff like that, so you have to get used to that, but they all pulled off the same. All the characters also have this big special move. If you use it, you use a bit of your own health, so it's like sacrificing some of your own health to try and like wipe out a whole bunch of dudes. And you only want to use that obviously when you're in dire straits, and or you can see like some sort of trash can in the corner, because you know under that trash can is going to be a strawberry cake for whatever reason. So the streets are filled with generic scum in this game. You got this fat dude that looks like Connor from the game of the same name that blows fire out of his mouth. You got these S&M women with whips that are just whipping the crap out of you. You got dudes on jetpacks and motorbikes. Jetpacks, yep, bad guys on jetpacks. Right down to the low-level trauma VHS box art looking mofos, the generic scum of scum, which you are just beating the crap out of in like every freaking level. So I'm just gonna pull up ahead here and have a little snack and some coffee, because I'm super tired again. This is still really early. Yeah, we up. I'll show you a quick view here of the cool river I'm looking at. Pretty cool, right? Yeah, so one of the biggest trump cards of this game is the sound. It is really excellent. The sound effects of beating up dudes, the sampled speech that they use for all the little like gestures and punks saying things, it's really cool, really high quality. The music though is just fantastic. It's got such an excellent soundtrack. Soundtracks by Yuzo Koshiro, Japanese dude. He made a lot of cool soundtracks. Yeah, every track in this game is just excellent. It gives you this like 90s dodgy club feel. It just really puts you in the mood for beating up scum. Also, if you want to get the soundtrack to this game, there's a company called Data Discs. They're a British company. They release vinyl versions of video game soundtracks. They pretty much only do Sega stuff, which is excellent. But they have got a double disc vinyl set for Streets of Rage 2 out, and it is just fantastic. You should definitely check that out. I'd highly recommend it. Yeah, I can't even tell you the amount of times friends came over and we started playing this game from start to finish in one go. It was just such a fun multiplayer game. Single player, it's really fun to play by yourself either way. It's just great. This game's also pretty easy to find in terms of digital form. You can get it on Steam, Sega Ultimate Genesis Collection, which was on PS3 and Xbox 360. It's on Xbox Live. It's on a bunch of other compilations. Very easy to find and play. If you're looking for the original is going to cost you a bit. It's a little bit harder to find. You know, lay out a bit of money, but it's definitely worth it. I don't suggest you play this game on any clone systems, especially, yeah, any clone Genesis or Megadrives, because the sound on those things is terrible and you're going to ruin the enjoyment of the game for sure. Yeah, so I'm just going to finish this coffee and stuff, and then we can hit the road and finish this thing off. Yeah, so overall I think Streets of Rage 2 is a flawless scrolling beat 'em up. If I had to play this or Final Fight, I would definitely take this, even though Final Fight's an excellent scrolling beat 'em up. This, I think, just hits every single check mark perfectly. It's just, oh, almost ran over a rabbit.
What's up, Doc?
Yeah, do yourself a favor. If you've never played this game, definitely check it out. Okay, so that wraps up episode 2 of Car, Coffee and 3 Reviews. Thanks for joining me. I'm your host BastichB at 64K. If you'd like to check out my other stuff like Facebook and Instagram, they both have completely different content, so you should definitely check that out. You can check that out at BastichB64K. And on that note, let's cut to the credits. Ha ha ha!